Our theme for this month is Love in Action. And today's topic is from like to love. In one of the back issues of our Science of Mind magazines, and for those of you who haven't had an opportunity to see one of these or to read one, we do have them on the back table there for you to purchase at your leisure. This is a monthly magazine which is put out by our home office, Centers for Spiritual Living. So in one of the back issues of that magazine, there was a wonderful article titled "The Power of Love," which was excerpted from one of the writings of Ernest Holmes titled "A New Design for Living." And in this, he brings forth an interesting concept that puts a little different spin on how we usually talk about love in the science of mind. See, we usually begin our discussions of love by saying what the very first page of that article I'm referring to addresses. Love is the basic reality of life. God is love. Therefore, we are love because we are its expression. And we always say that God's love for us is always there for us, whether we choose to recognize it or not. And all that's true. However, in the day-to-day living of life, it sometimes, even frequently, doesn't appear so. So where do we start with that? In his article, Dr. Holmes brings forth another of his brilliant insights that have given his teaching this real-life practicality and usability. It's a single statement on the surface, but as I explored it, I found that its depth and its breadth was profound. Here's what he said: find something to like. Find something to like. For many of us, living in our humanness most of the hours of the day and most of the days of our lives, it's sometimes challenging, even difficult, to go directly to love when someone annoys us, disagrees with us, or does something his or her own way, not the way we think they should do it. It's sometimes challenging or difficult to go directly to love when something, of course that something is out there, is different than it used to be, or different than I think it should be. So Ernest says, find something to like and concentrate on that alone. Turn away from the condition of annoyance, disagreement, or differences and focus on what has value. And because, as Dr. Holmes is quick to remind us, everyone and everything has something of value, no matter how big or small. So why not start with an idea, an action that is manageable and practical? Start with one living thing to like. And once we've accomplished this, we've created a space through which our love can begin to flow in, around, and through that person or thing or situation. Some of you may be familiar with the writings of Bernie Siegel. Dr. Siegel is a medical doctor and a surgeon who has chosen to concentrate on working in the area of body-mind medicine, and subsequently has written over a dozen books now, as well as numerous recordings and films. And in his book, which I'm holding in my hand, titled Prescriptions for Living, there are a number of vignettes, most of which are from his own experiences, and what he calls inspirational lessons for a joyful living life. So here's one that I want to share with you this morning that I think is an example of what Ernest Holmes reminded us about, that everyone and everything has something of value, no matter how big or how small. Why not start with an idea, an action that's manageable and practical, Holmes says. Start with one thing to like, and once we have accomplished this, we've created a space through which our love can flow in, around, and through that person, place, or thing. So here in Bernie Siegel's own words is a story that I want to share with you, and it's called Loving Others. He said he and his wife were out for a conference, and one evening when they left their hotel room to go to dinner, as they walked down the hallway to the elevator, they noticed a man standing kind of off to one side, sort of about half hidden behind a potted phony tree, and just there, just a presence. And they said they had a good look at him while they waited for the elevator, but they just didn't, really, there was no flow of energy back and forth. But when they returned to their room that night, they found that it had been ransacked and that a number of valuables had been stolen, including his wife's jewels and a beautiful fur coat that he had bought her while they were on the European continent. So he said they reported the theft. They gave the police a description of that man they had seen in the hall. And the next morning, when he began to do his personal meditation, he said he was disturbed by that picture. When he closed his eyes, he could see that man standing in the hallway. And he said he was even more disturbed by the thoughts he was having of what he'd like to do to that guy. After all, he's a spiritual being, but he's having a human experience, yeah? So he said, even after they checked out of the hotel and the police had nothing to report to them when they left, he said, even then, the thoughts of that individual continued to bother his morning meditation. So he said, after several weeks, he got to thinking. He said, I'm still angry over this loss. I'm angry over this violation. And I realized that I am allowing this burglar, whoever it is, and I don't even really know that it was that man, but it's somebody. I'm allowing that individual to control my life and my thoughts. So he said, I spontaneously, after I sat with that for a few minutes, I spontaneously visualized that man bringing his children Christmas presents that he had purchased with the money that he had obtained from stealing from our room. He said, as I pictured that scene, I thought to myself, if I had known that he was going to do that, I would have just left some money for him in the room so that he could have taken that without having to convert the coat, the jewelry. See, he thought this out completely, but not at the conscious level before this finally got to the conscious level. So he said, I finished that visualization with a smile on my face. And he said, I never again allowed that face, that figure, that person that I had created to bother my thoughts again. In fact, if I think about him, even now, I smile and I visualize his children. So he said, you can point out that the burglar probably spent the money on drugs rather than his children. Maybe he did. But it doesn't make any difference to Dr. Siegel what he did with their belongings. He said, I'm free because of the change in me. And he said, actually, my son Jeff experienced a home robbery several years afterward. And he said, I told him this story, and he said, well, then I'm just going to know that the burglar bought his mother a birthday present. So shortly after he had come to grips with this scenario, he said he was driving down the street one day, had the car radio on, and Carly Simon was singing, I haven't got time for the pain. And he said, I thought to myself, there is such wisdom in that statement, in that song. I haven't got time for the pain. We don't really have the luxury of a lot of extra time to spend in pain. Some pain may be necessary. Just for instance, the pain that protects you from an injury or leads you to respond to the needs of others. But the pain you feel when something or someone is disturbing your life and those thoughts are not useful, then you would be a lot happier if you just resolve that problem and resume your life. One of the things that reminded me of as I read through the story was what Wayne Dyer used to say about here on planet Earth, in this lifetime, we do not have the benefit of rewind in our lives. Once something has occurred, it's over. It's done. You cannot go back, redo it, and change it. The only thing you can change is how you feel about it, what you see, or what you learn from it. And in fact, he wrote a book about that. It's the only fiction book Wayne Dyer ever wrote. And it's the story of Isis. Before that name was a negative one. A female individual who lived on the planet Uranus. And on the planet Uranus, they had rewind. So if you did or said something and you wanted to take it back or erase it or change it, you could go into rewind and do that. Now, why do you suppose we can't do that here in this plane of existence? I will tell you. The reason you can't do that here in this plane of existence is because you, I, any one of us is never alone in any experience. There is always someone, something, or some ones and things that are involved in that because we are not alone and isolated in this plane of existence. So to change it in my life would then have a domino effect on who knows how many people. Think about that as chaos. So it's much easier to recognize that what has happened has happened. It's over, it's done with. The only time it has any power at all is when you bring it into the present moment. When you bring it into the present moment, then you have the opportunity to decide, this no longer impacts me in a negative way, and I am ready to release it. I have acknowledged it. I have blessed it for bringing me to this moment in time, making me who and what I am in this moment in time, and now I release it because it no longer serves me. If it still has some positive value and you bring it into the present, then you can utilize that in a positive and life-affirming way. So you're going to think about this all week long. Because for some people, this is a really new concept. And if it is a concept that you have already recognized and come to grips with, you're going to start looking at some little things that pop into your mind. And am I utilizing this in a positive and life-affirming way? Or am I ready to let this go and replace it with something that is positive and life-affirming? So the story that Dr. Siegel tells is a part of his quest now, not only as a medical doctor, but as a person of spiritual awareness, to encourage and support people in healing from physical illnesses, injuries, or difficulties that have been perpetrated and in many instances continued as a result of things that need to be let go of in the mind, which is affecting the body. You know, they are connected. Mind and body are connected. In fact, what we call mind, we usually mean as our brain. Our mind, this wonderful universal connection with spirit, our mind is in every cell of our body. Our cells, each cell is intelligent. It has a job to do, and it does its job amazingly well. And you haven't even been paying attention to what any of the cells in your body are doing during this talk. They're still doing, because they are impenetrable when it comes to being pulled off topic, like we sometimes are. So the brain is a part of that, but the mind is in every part of our body. And when our body is crying out for healing, it's because of something that's in there that needs to be released. And that always goes back to a thought, an action, something in our past, something we haven't yet recognized is impacting us in a negative way. That's why we call this a healing teaching. Not that we don't use doctors, we do. Not that we don't use therapies and surgeries and the hand of God showing up in medicine in every possible way. But that's in order to get us back to where we can complete the healing, which is to come back to physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. So got a little off my target there, but couldn't let that go. So why is all of this necessary? Well, Dr. Siegel answered that question for himself. And Holmes answers it by saying, this is necessary. This is necessary that we allow the love to flow in, around, and through us, and allow that to go out from us once we have an adequate store of that we can share. And once we have a recognition that flowing in, around, and through us is an ongoing process, that this is always flowing through us, by means of us, God expressing. So Holmes says we cannot hate or dislike in one direction and like or love in another. So with loving kindness and with patience with ourselves, we take each opportunity to move further along the scale from like to love. Though we may know at the deepest level that everyone and everything is yet another way in which creative spirit presents or disguises itself in our everyday living, sometimes we forget that. We sometimes capitulate to fear. What I don't understand, I am suspicious of, or I am fearful of. And that's the stuff of which hate is made. But no condition or relationship can be changed for the better by hating. Have you noticed? Finding something to like and focusing on that is as necessary to our own well-being as it is to our friends and especially to our enemies. Because sooner or later, the physical state of our health depends in great degree to the amount of love, or its lack, in us. If we forget everything else, Dr. Holmes suggests, we are faced with a simple matter of expediency, that of expressing love in support of our own preservation. And that's where it always starts anyway. We must always begin with ourselves. We must always heal or strengthen or expand the consciousness in ourselves in order to be of service to anyone else. in order to even recognize these qualities in anyone else. If we forget everything else, Dr. Holmes suggests, we're faced with a simple matter of expediency. So if I haven't already, I can begin this process by sincerely forgiving myself for any and all omissions of lack of love in the past. I can remove that from my mind now by the process I described a little while ago, and replace them with some idea of love. Maybe even starting with like. With some idea of like. That I can discover from previous situations, and then I can morph, if you will. I can eventually move from like to love. And then, in addition to including this progress from like to love, I follow that age-old idea of letting something good be said. Let something be good. Let something good be said of myself. Let something good be said by me of those around me. And then let something good be said of me by others. And I hear it. How often do we rebuff that when someone pays us a compliment or says something just spontaneously that's loving, and we rebuff it? Let something good be said of me, and I hear it. And I say, thank you. Let something good be said of me by others, and I accept it. I believe it. Now I'm ready to find something to like about others and to concentrate on that in their behalf. I can turn away from any condition of annoyance, of disagreement, or difference in my relationship with others now and begin to focus on what has value. Because everyone and everything has something of value, no matter how big or small, in my grading system. So start with an idea, an action that's manageable and practical. Stay with one thing to like, and once having accomplished this, we have created a space through which our love can begin to flow in, around, and through. That object that we have chosen, whether it's a thing, an idea, or a person, a place, whatever, but we are allowing that love to envelop that which we are bringing into our consciousness. This is love in action. And it's created and spawned, of course, by divine intelligence, as we talked about earlier in Standing in the Light. That divine intelligence always stands ready to support us, to surround us with love, to imbue us with love, with success, with prosperity, with creativity, with loving relationships, always ready. As we begin to accept that concept, our consciousness opens. As we begin to accept those gifts, that begins to display by means of us. Now we have filled the well. And now we can share that because we recognize that there is an eternal and constant flow coming in that we can release in a variety of different ways. And each of us has infinite ways in which we do that, in which we let the reciprocal action of love, which is inherent in the universe, to flow in, around, and through us, and to express in every phase of our experience, in every connection with each individual. As we know, if it flows out, it has to return. As we give, so shall we receive. And so it is.
Yes, it is. Wonderful. Wow. Words of wisdom for us all to use, huh? We're going back to the program. Oh, we're going to do a music. Okay. We're going to go to the program. And in the program is the prosperity affirmation. We'll read that together. And during the collection, we'll sing the abundance song. Okay, everybody have it? My offering is my acceptance of God as the source of my supply and symbolizes my faith in the abundant flow of this supply, and so it is. So work through here to find the abundance song. Yes? Okay. It's also called the offering song. How about that?